The camera phone was shoved inches from her face, broadcasting her supposed crime to thousands of angry viewers. "Female SEALs don't exist!" the accuser screamed, demanding her immediate arrest. But when the dust settled in the military interrogation room, the devastating scar she revealed didn't just silence her critics, it made a 4-star Navy admiral freeze in absolute terror. The crystal chandeliers of the Hotel del Coronado cast a warm, golden glow over the grand ballroom. It was the night of the annual Naval Special Warfare Foundation Gala in San Diego, California. The room was a sea of dress blues, sparkling evening gowns, and the quiet clinking of champagne flutes. It was a night of reverence, a gathering of the nation's most elite warriors and their families. Standing near the balcony doors, allowing the cool Pacific breeze to wash over her, was Chief Petty Officer Cora Mitchell. She stood flawlessly straight, a glass of sparkling water resting in her calloused hand. Her dress uniform was immaculately tailored, sharply pressed, and adorned with ribbons that told a story of unimaginable sacrifice. But it was the gold Special Warfare insignia, the coveted SEAL trident pinned perfectly above her ribbons, and the distinct Navy cross resting beside it, that drew the eyes of everyone who walked past. For the most part, the attendees gave her respectful nods or curious glances. The integration of women into elite combat roles was still a fiercely debated topic in the public sphere, but in this room, the brass knew there were classified integration programs that the public hadn't been cleared to know about. However, Bradley Lawson wasn't brass. He was a disgruntled former supply clerk who had served 4 uneventful years in the early 2000s and had since found his life's calling as a self-appointed military watchdog. Bradley ran a wildly popular social media channel dedicated to exposing stolen valor, hunting down civilians who wore unearned military uniforms, and publicly humiliating them for views, likes, and sponsorships. Bradley had snuck into the gala using a press pass he'd aggressively badgered a local news outlet into giving him. He was prowling the room for content when his eyes locked onto Cora. His heart leaped. To Bradley, this was the holy grail of stolen valor. A woman wearing a SEAL trident and a Navy cross, it was mathematically impossible to him. In his rigidly defined worldview, the military didn't operate in the shadows, and women certainly didn't pass BUD-S, the grueling basic underwater demolition, SEAL training. "Look at this," Bradley whispered to his smartphone, the red live button blinking in the corner of the screen. Thousands of viewers were already tuning in as he marched across the ballroom, his face red with righteous indignation. "We have a live one, folks, right in the middle of the most sacred SEAL event of the year. Watch me take this fraud down." Cora didn't flinch as Bradley aggressively stepped into her personal space. Snipers are defined by their stillness, their ability to control their heart rate under extreme duress. She simply slowly turned her head, her steel gray eyes locking onto his phone lens, and then shifting to his flushed face. "Excuse me, sweetheart," Bradley sneered, his voice loud enough to turn heads at the neighboring tables. "I just wanted to ask what Bud S class you graduated from. Because I know the rosters of the last 50 classes, and I don't remember seeing any women getting pinned." The chatter in the immediate vicinity died down. A few active duty operators turned around, their expressions hardening. Master Chief Miller, a towering man with a scarred jawline, took a step toward the commotion but paused, watching to see how the female chief would handle herself. "Class 334, Cora answered softly. Her voice was steady, devoid of the panic Bradley was so used to seeing in the frauds he cornered at shopping malls and airports. "But you won't find my name on the public registry, sir. Now, if you'll excuse me, you are interrupting my evening." "Class 334? Bradley barked a harsh, theatrical laugh, holding the phone closer to her chest to get a clear shot of her medals. "Class 334 graduated 3 years ago. There were 0 females. Who the hell do you think you are, dressing up like this? Do you know what these men go through to earn this piece of metal?" He reached out, his finger jabbing violently toward the trident on her chest. Before his finger could make contact, Cora's hand snapped up. Her grip locked onto Bradley's wrist with the mechanical, crushing force of a steel vise. She didn't strike him, but the agonizing pressure on his median nerve made his knees instantly buckle. He let out a sharp gasp of pain, the phone trembling in his other hand. "Do not touch me," Cora said, her voice dropping an octave, radiating a lethal, icy calm. "Assault!" Bradley shrieked, instantly playing the victim for his camera. "You see this? This stolen Valor fraud is assaulting me? Someone get the MPs! The ballroom erupted into chaos. The music abruptly halted. Two uniformed master-at-arms, acting as event security, sprinted through the crowd, heavily armed and looking frantic. They saw a civilian in distress, and a woman in a chief's uniform holding his wrist. "Let him go, Chief." One of the MPs, a young officer named Jenkins, ordered, resting his hand on his holster. Cora immediately released Bradley's wrist and took a calculated half-step back, assuming a non-threatening posture with her hands visible. "He attempted to make unwanted physical contact," she stated calmly. Bradley scrambled backward, clutching his wrist, his face a mask of furious triumph. "Arrest her! She's a total fraud! Run her ID! She's wearing a trident and a Navy cross!" "It's a federal crime." Officer Jenkins looked at Cora. Her uniform was perfect, but Bradley was right. Jenkins had never heard of a female SEAL holding a Navy cross. The situation was completely outside his standard operating procedures. "Ma'am, I need to see your military ID," Jenkins said, his tone tight with suspicion. Cora reached into her inner breast pocket and produced a standard DoD Common Access card. Jenkins snatched it and pulled out his mobile scanner, linking directly to the DEER's military database. He scanned the barcode on the back. The device beeped ominously, and the screen flashed red. Restricted. No record found. Jenkins' eyes narrowed. He looked up at Cora, his expression shifting from confusion to disgust. "Fake ID," he muttered to his partner. "We got a fraud." The crowd gasped. Master Chief Miller shook his head in disgust and turned away. Bradley Lawson was practically vibrating with joy, narrating his victory to his tens of thousands of live viewers. I told you guys, taking out the trash." "Turn around and place your hands behind your back," Jenkins ordered Cora, pulling a pair of flex cuffs from his belt. Cora didn't argue. She didn't scream or cry like Bradley wanted her to. She calmly turned around, presenting her wrists. "You are making a significant administrative error, Officer Jenkins," she said quietly. "I strongly advise you to contact JSOC Command before you escalate this." "Shut up, imposter!" the second MP snapped, securing the zip ties tightly around her wrists. "You're a disgrace to that uniform." As they marched her out of the ballroom, parading her past hundreds of glaring, judgmental eyes, the camera flashes blinded her. She was being escorted out like a criminal, publicly humiliated on the most important night of the naval calendar. But beneath her stoic exterior, Cora's mind was calculating. They had no idea the hornet's nest they had just kicked. The security holding room in the basement of the hotel was sterile, cold, and smelled faintly of bleach. Cora sat perfectly upright in a metal folding chair, her hands still bound behind her back. She had been sitting in total silence for 45 minutes. Outside the door, she could hear the muffled, frantic voices of the security detail. Officer Jenkins was trying to figure out what to do with her. Handing her over to the San Diego police meant involving the FBI, since stolen valor and forging federal military documents were federal offenses. "I ran her fingerprints through the standard APHIS database," Jenkins was saying outside. "Nothing. It's like she doesn't exist. She's a ghost. Probably some psycho civilian who memorized a bunch of Wikipedia articles." Suddenly, the heavy steel door swung open, and the atmosphere in the room violently shifted. Standing in the doorway was Admiral Thomas Croft. Croft was a legend in the naval special warfare community. A towering, broad-shouldered man in his late 50s, he had spent 30 years operating in the darkest corners of the globe. He was a veteran of Mogadishu, the mountains of Afghanistan, and the urban hellscapes of Iraq. He currently served as the commander of the Pacific Fleet. His dress uniform was heavy with actual blood-earned medals. His face was weathered, his jaw set in stone, and his eyes burned with a terrifying, righteous fury. He despised stolen valor. To him, it wasn't just a crime, it was a profound desecration of the men who had died in his arms. When Master Chief Miller had informed him that a woman was upstairs impersonating a SEAL with a Navy cross, Croft had personally left the VIP table to handle the interrogation. He walked slowly into the room, Officer Jenkins trailing nervously behind him. Croft stood over Cora, his shadow swallowing her small frame. "Take the cuffs off," Croft ordered in a low, gravelly voice. "Admiral, she's a flight risk," Jenkins started. "Take the damn cuffs off, Jenkins, or I will use your teeth to cut them," Croft growled, never taking his eyes off Cora. Jenkins hastily drew his trauma shears and snipped the thick plastic ties. Cora brought her arms forward, rubbing her wrists gently, her face remaining entirely unreadable. "Get out," Croft ordered the MP. Jenkins practically sprinted out, pulling the heavy door shut behind him. For a long moment, the Admiral simply stared at her. He took in her flawless posture, the precise way her ribbons were measured, the absolute lack of fear in her eyes. Most civilians, even most junior sailors, would be shaking uncontrollably under his gaze. But this woman was looking at him with the detached, analytical stare of an apex predator. "I have buried 42 brothers," Croft began, his voice barely above a whisper, vibrating with restrained rage. 42 men who bled into the dirt so that this country could sleep. Men who earned that trident. Men who died earning that Navy Cross. "And you think you can buy them online and play dress-up at my gala?" "I didn't buy them, Admiral," Cora said evenly. Croft slammed his massive hands onto the metal table, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "Your name isn't in Deers. Your ID is a high-grade forgery. I personally know every living Navy Cross recipient in the SEAL teams. I do not know you." "Because you were never cleared to know me, sir," Cora replied. "My records aren't in Deers because they are compartmentalized under a special access program. Echo Tango 7. Croft's eyes twitched. Echo Tango 7. The mere mention of that clearance level was a shock. It was a JSOC Black Book designation, usually reserved for Tier 1 operators detached to the CIA's Special Activities Center. A civilian shouldn't know that term. "You read a Tom Clancy novel. Congratulations," Croft sneered, though a tiny sliver of doubt began to creep into his mind. "I'm calling the FBI. You're going to federal prison." "Before you make that call, Admiral," Cora said, her voice finally adopting an edge of urgency, "I want you to think back to the 14th of August 2019, the Korengal Valley, Operation Red Dagger." The color instantly vanished from Admiral Croft's face. He physically took a step back, as if she had struck him. Operation Red Dagger was completely off the books. It was a disaster that haunted Croft every single night. He was the ground commander overseeing a high-value target extraction. His convoy had been ambushed by overwhelming Taliban forces. They were pinned down in a rocky gorge, taking heavy casualties. The only reason Croft and his men survived was because of an unknown Overwatch sniper attached to a covert intelligence unit. The sniper, operating under the call sign Whiskey 7, had held the high ground alone for 6 hours. The sniper had neutralized 22 enemy combatants, picking off RPG gunners in the pitch black of night, saving Croft's life. But during the exfiltration, Whiskey 7's position was hit by a coordinated mortar barrage. The mountain practically collapsed. Croft had ordered the medevac helicopters to search, but there was too much fire. Command had officially declared Whiskey 7 KIA. The body was never recovered. "How? How do you know about Red Dagger?" Croft breathed, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Who fed you that intel?" "You ordered the Blackhawks to pull back at 0400 hours because the anti-aircraft fire was too thick," Cora said, her eyes boring into his soul. "You got on the radio. You told me, Whiskey 7, we are bingo fuel. I'm sorry. We can't get to you. God bless you." Croft's hands began to shake. "No, that's impossible. The comms were encrypted. No one survived that ridge." "I survived," Cora whispered. She slowly reached up to the collar of her pristine dress blue uniform. With deliberate movements, she unbuttoned the top 3 buttons and pulled the heavy fabric down over her left shoulder. Croft stepped forward, his eyes wide. There, marring the smooth skin of her shoulder and clavicle, was a catastrophic jagged scar. But it wasn't just any scar. It was the distinct, starburst entry wound of a Russian-made 7.62 X54mm sniper round the exact caliber used by the enemy snipers that night. But that wasn't what made the Admiral freeze. Right below the scar tissue, burned deep into her skin, was a faded but unmistakable brand. A small, black dagger piercing a playing card, the 7 of spades. It was the unofficial, highly illegal, deeply classified brand given only to the operators of JSOC's Phantom Team, Whiskey 7's team. Croft stared at the scar, his mind desperately trying to reconcile reality, the sniper who had saved his life, the ghost who had held the mountain alone, the warrior he had wept for, believing he had left one of his own behind to die in the dirt. It was a woman, and she was sitting in handcuffs in a hotel basement. The silence in the room was deafening. Admiral Croft slowly raised his eyes from her shoulder to her face. Tears, hot and unbidden, welled up in the eyes of the battle-hardened commander. "Whiskey 7?" he choked out, his voice cracking entirely. "Reporting for duty, sir," Cora said softly, buttoning her collar back up. Suddenly, the door swung open again. Bradley Lawson, holding his live-streaming phone, had managed to slip past Jenkins, desperate to catch the Admiral screaming at the fraud. "Hey, Admiral," Bradley yelled to the camera. "Show the world what we do to stolen valor." Croft spun around, and the look of sheer, murderous violence on his face made Bradley instantly freeze in his tracks. Admiral Croft moved with a terrifying, predatory speed that entirely defied his age. Before Bradley Lawson could utter another syllable to his live audience, Croft's massive hand shot out and snatched the smartphone directly from his grip. With a sickening crunch, the Admiral slammed the device against the steel corner of the interrogation table. The screen shattered into a spiderweb of useless glass, instantly killing the broadcast. Bradley stumbled backward, his mouth hanging open in shock, his manufactured bravado completely evaporating. "Officer Jenkins!" Croft roared, his voice rattling the metal fixtures of the basement room. The heavy door flew open, and Jenkins rushed inside, his hand hovering over his sidearm. "Sir!" "Arrest this civilian immediately," Croft ordered, pointing a trembling, furious finger at Bradley. "Charge him with trespassing on a secure military reservation, unauthorized recording of a federal official, and obstruction of a classified debriefing. If he speaks another word, I want him charged with espionage. Get this pathetic excuse for a man out of my sight before I forget my rank and break his jaw." Bradley's face drained of all color. "Admiral, wait, I was just exposing a fraud. She's fake. You can't do this to me." "You have no idea what you are looking at, you miserable parasite," Croft growled, stepping into Bradley's personal space. The sheer gravitational pull of the Admiral's authority forced Bradley to his knees. "You are in the presence of a giant. Now get out." Jenkins didn't hesitate. He grabbed Bradley by the collar of his cheap suit, aggressively securing his arms behind his back with a fresh pair of flex cuffs, and violently frog-marched the sobbing streamer out into the hallway. The heavy steel door slammed shut once more, leaving the room in a thick, echoing silence. Croft slowly turned back to Cora. The blistering rage that had just consumed him melted away, replaced by a profound, agonizing sorrow. His knees suddenly looked weak. The four-star commander, a man who had stared down warlords and insurgencies, pulled out a folding chair and heavily sat down across from her. He buried his face in his calloused hands. "I left you behind," Croft whispered, the immense weight of 7 years of survivor's guilt bleeding into his voice. The mountain came down, and the thermals showed zero signs of life. JSOC Command told me Whiskey 7 was gone. I wrote the letter to the Phantom file myself. How? How are you sitting here, Chief? Cora leaned forward, her demeanor softening just a fraction. For the first time all evening, the icy, stoic mask of the elite sniper cracked, revealing the deeply human trauma beneath. "The mortar round didn't kill me, Admiral. It threw me down the eastern ravine," Cora explained quietly. "I was buried under 3 feet of shale and dirt. My left shoulder was shattered, 2 collapsed lungs, and a fractured femur. By the time I managed to dig myself out, your birds were already gone." Croft stared at her, his eyes shining with unshed tears, hanging on every word. "I crawled for 2 miles, she continued, her voice remarkably detached, as if reciting an after-action report. "A local shepherd, allied with the Northern Alliance, found me. He hid me in his cellar for 4 days while the Taliban scoured the valley looking for the sniper who had wiped out their assault team. The shepherd managed to get a message to a CIA field office in Jalalabad. A covert Special Activities Center extraction team came for me in the dead of night." "But why the Ghost Protocol?" Croft asked, his brow furrowing in confusion. "Why didn't they inform Naval Special Warfare? Why didn't they tell me?"
"Because of what I was," Cora replied flatly. "In 2019, the integration of females into Tier 1 direct action roles was entirely off the books.
It was a black-budget pilot program directed by the Pentagon. If the media or Congress found out a female operator was left behind in the Korangal Valley, the political fallout would have shut down the entire program. General Arthur Collins, the head of JSOC at the time, made the call. Whiskey 7 died on that mountain. My records were scrubbed from Deers. I was transported to a black site medical facility in Ramstein, Germany, and spent 2 years learning how to walk and shoot again under the alias Jane Doe. Croft felt a sickening knot twist in his stomach. The bureaucracy, the politics, they had erased a hero to protect a program. They gave me the Navy Cross in a windowless room at Langley, Cora said, glancing down at the heavy metal resting on her chest. Just me, the director, and a flag. Last month, my security clearance was finally declassified enough for me to officially rejoin the Standard Navy Registry, though my combat records remain sealed. Tonight was supposed to be my first time wearing the uniform in public, a quiet re-entry. She looked up, a ghost of a smile playing on her lips. I didn't anticipate Mr. Lawson. Admiral Croft slowly stood up. He walked around the table and did something he hadn't done in 2 decades. He snapped to the position of attention and delivered a slow, perfectly executed, razor-sharp salute to a chief petty officer. "You saved my life, Chief Mitchell," Croft said, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved my men. You held the line when the sky was falling, and I will be damned if I let you hide in the shadows tonight." "Admiral, with respect, I don't need a parade," Cora said, returning the salute crisp and tight. "No," Croft said, a fierce, protective fire reigniting in his eyes. "You don't need a parade, but this community needs to know what a real hero looks like. Come with me." The atmosphere in the grand ballroom was tense. The music had resumed, but the conversations were hushed and urgent. Rumors were flying like shrapnel. Everyone had seen the female chief dragged out in zip ties. The active duty operators were murmuring about stolen valor, while the top brass were frantically texting their public affairs officers to prepare for a media fallout. Master Chief Miller was standing by the main doors, arms crossed, his face a thundercloud. He hated seeing the uniform disrespected. Suddenly, the heavy oak doors to the ballroom swung open. The room instantly fell silent. Walking side by side were Admiral Thomas Croft and Chief Cora Mitchell. The zip ties were gone. Her uniform was immaculate, but it was the Admiral's posture that sent a shockwave through the room. Croft wasn't escorting a prisoner. He was walking with the deferential, protective stance of a man guarding a national treasure. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Bradley Lawson was nowhere to be seen, having been dragged out through the kitchen loading dock by a very enthusiastic Officer Jenkins. Croft marched straight toward the stage at the front of the ballroom. He ignored the scheduled speaker, stepped up to the podium, and grabbed the microphone. The microphone whined with a brief squawk of feedback, echoing over the silent, captivated audience. Cora remained standing at the base of the stage, her hands clasped behind her back in the parade rest position, her eyes fixed forward. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Croft's voice boomed through the speakers, carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Earlier tonight, an incident occurred in this room. A civilian interloper attempted to humiliate one of our own, claiming that the medals she wears were unearned, claiming that her presence here was a fraud." The Admiral gripped the edges of the podium, his knuckles turning white. He looked directly at Master Chief Miller, then swept his gaze across the hundreds of SEALs in the room. 7 years ago, during Operation Red Dagger in the Korengal Valley, my convoy was ambushed, Croft said, his voice trembling slightly with the memory. We were outgunned, outmanned, and out of time. We survived because a lone sniper, operating from a compromised ridge, held off an entire Taliban assault force for 6 hours. That sniper took 22 confirmed kills in total darkness, bleeding from shrapnel wounds, refusing to fall back until my men were in the medevac birds. A heavy, reverent silence blanketed the ballroom. Every operator in the room knew the legend of Red Dagger. They all knew the myth of the phantom sniper who had perished on the mountain. "I was told that sniper died," Croft continued, his voice rising, bouncing off the crystal chandeliers. "I was told we left a brother in the dirt, but I was wrong. We didn't leave a brother." Croft extended his hand, pointing directly at Cora. "We left a sister." The gasp from the crowd was audible. "Chief Petty Officer Cora Mitchell is a Tier 1 operator," Croft declared, his voice ringing with absolute finality. "She survived the mountain. She bears the scars of our freedom. The SEAL trident on her chest was earned in the bloodiest dirt on earth, and the Navy Cross she wears was pinned on her for saving my life. She is a ghost no longer." For a span of 5 seconds, the ballroom was so quiet you could hear the ocean waves crashing against the beach outside. Then, Master Chief Miller moved. The towering, heavily scarred veteran stepped forward, turned directly toward Cora, and snapped a textbook salute. Chief Mitchell, Miller barked, his voice choked with profound respect. As if a dam had broken, the entire room erupted. 400 of the most elite, hardened warriors on the planet surged to their feet. Chairs scraped violently against the floor. The deafening sound of a standing ovation thundered through the Hotel del Coronado. Admirals, captains, and enlisted men alike stood at rigid attention, saluting the woman they had all silently judged just an hour before. Cora Mitchell stood at the center of the storm. Her steel-gray eyes scanned the room, taking in the sea of respect, the absolute validation of her brothers in arms. A single, solitary tear slipped down her cheek, quickly wiped away by the calloused hand that had held a rifle steady when the world was burning. She wasn't a fraud. She wasn't an experiment. She was exactly where she belonged. If this incredible true story of Chief Cora Mitchell's undeniable bravery and sacrifice moved you, please hit that like button and share this video to honor our hidden heroes. There are countless warriors whose sacrifices go unnoticed, and it is our duty to keep their legacies alive. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more untold stories of military history, gripping true-life drama, and incredible survival. Leave a comment below with your thoughts. We read every single one.